Nibbid-Away Dharma Talks.
Talk 11, 14th of October 2012. Right Mindfulness. Professor Geoffrey Hunt talks about hindrances and teachers.
Today I want to talk about all those things that seem to get in the way of our developing concentration and mindfulness. We've spoken about concentration and mindfulness before, so I won't revise all that now. But of course, as you try to concentrate the mind so that it loses its incoherence and fragmentariness and starts to become calm and reflecting, you'll find that things will be getting in the way. And the Buddha has a teaching on this, known as the 5 hindrances, or 5 obstacles. These will all be very familiar to you. And because we're developing mindfulness, it's good to be aware of those obstacles. And after a while, they cease to be obstacles. They are, in a funny way, our teachers. Things that get in the way in our lives are often our best teachers, as long as we know how to steer our way around them or through them or with them sometimes. However, they are called the 5 hindrances in the classical teaching, but I'd rather not think of them as hindrances so much as things that we can learn from. So I would actually prefer to call them the 5 teachers rather than the 5 hindrances. What are they? What are these mental things or attitudinal things that get in the way when we're trying to meditate? Well, in a nutshell, desire, ill will, laziness, worry and doubt. Let's go through these a little bit more slowly and try to understand what they mean. But they'll be very familiar to you because you will have been experiencing these probably quite strongly at times as you try to meditate. So let's take the first one. The first one is called desire. Now, all the time, of course, we are translating from one language to another. We're trying to find the best English word. Desire isn't a particularly appropriate word here. Desire, I think, in the sort of modern world, maybe makes us think of sexual desire first, I think. Or maybe it's just me. Or is it the desire for that chocolate cake, is sort of, delicious food or something. But what it's about in a nutshell, it's just, being in a state of wanting something. Could be anything at all. By desire, we mean wanting. I'd actually prefer to use the word wanting. We're in a state of want almost all the time, but we don't actually pay attention to that state itself. Of course we don't. We pay attention to what it is that we want, don't we? I want the chocolate cake, so I'm thinking about the chocolate cake. I'm not thinking about the wanting. That seems a bit strange. And yet that is what this path is about. It's about turning things inwards and looking at our states of mind. It's looking at things at a different level. So instead of thinking about things outside and my mind being directed outside, I'm turning my mind into the very process of wanting, thinking, etc. That's at a higher level. The first hindrance, if it were a hindrance, is overcome and becomes a teacher when I start to understand how it works. So when I'm able to examine my own wanting and just first of all, acknowledge it. I realize that I'm in a state of want. I want something, whatever it is. When I can say, yes, this is now right, I'm wanting. But I've got to cut off the thing that I want and start looking at the wanting. Can we do this? It seems strange. It's like if I had a torch and I shone it on something in the darkness. Of course, my entire attention would be to the object that the torch is illuminating. But I'm saying, don't do that. Be aware of the light that is coming from the torch. It is the light of the torch, the action of the torch, the illuminating power of the torch that we are paying attention to. It seems a little strange at first. How could I do this? This is a breakthrough in human thinking, human ability. If we can do this, it could transform one's life, it could transform societies. Because we are so outward directed, and we're outwardly directed in terms of our wants and our fears and our things that we reject. And then we just get on with it and fall out with each other and fall out with nature and just generally causing havoc all around. But if we could only become aware of our own wanting and our other states of mind, then that becomes the object of our attention. Then we are getting to know ourselves, and we're getting to know what we are like, what we human beings are like, generally. Puts us in a different position. Wanting. Well, there's two sides to this. There's wanting and there's not wanting. Well, no, there's actually three sides, because what about neutrality, where something doesn't occur to you as either something that you reject or something that you want? So you could say there are three elements here. Either I want something, which means, what does it mean? You see, you've got to look into yourself to see, what is this thing wanting? Well, look, I am experiencing it, so it's right there in front of me. So I am in the best position to know what it is. Because I'm doing it. But I don't think about it. But I can think about it. So when I'm in a state of want, I become aware that I'm wanting, and then I think to myself, or I don't really think to myself, but I kind of examine the state of wanting. How do you characterize that? How do you characterize wanting or not wanting, pushing away? I want this. I don't want that. What's going on? It's like I'm trying to draw this towards me. I'm trying to make it part of me. Right? But that's rejecting. Don't want that. Don't want that to be part of me. So I don't want it in my space. I don't want it to be mine. Whereas this, I do want to be mine. I do want it in my space. If you develop the mindfulness of states of mind, then you will learn from the wanting itself. It ceases to be a hindrance and it becomes your teacher, because now you're understanding yourself. And that so much of our lives are guided by wanting and rejecting. That's why we use those words at the very opening to the whole Dharma session about wanting and rejecting. So the first hindrance to my sitting here trying to develop my power of attention and mindfulness would seem to be that I start wanting something. I want to scratch my knee. Or I want to get in the car and go for a drive up to Box Hill and relax. Or I want to have a delicious lunch or a drink with my friends. Or, the state of want will come into my being and take me away from the concentration and mindfulness, so it seems, are things that I don't want. To be in a state of want is probably equally bad as being in a state of rejection. They're both kind of cause suffering, but in different ways. If I want something I haven't got, I'm aching for it. It's like I have a hole in me somewhere and I want it filled in, so I'm sort of aching for that thing. But what if I have something that I don't want? Then it becomes a burden. Instead of being a hole that needs to be filled, it's now something I'm carrying around, thinking, if only I could drop this. If only I could get it away from me, because it's heavy. I don't want it. Both of them are causing me pain. One because I've got a hole in me somewhere which I want to fill up, and the other one because I'm carrying something I don't want. They're both painful. I don't want a hole, and I don't want to carry something I don't want. Think of the times that you're feeling unhappy, and then ask yourself, what am I unhappy about? Usually it's because there's something I want I can't have, or because something I have that I don't want. It's pretty sad, really, isn't it? To go through life like this, because this is what we're like. So we found out something about what we're like. Now, of course, what we also want to know is, how do I deal with that? How do I move beyond a state of wanting and rejecting? Well, that's part of the teaching as well, and that comes under right effort, which we will talk about. But the first thing to do is to, if you like, get a sort of geography of our states of mind. Desire, ill will, laziness, worry, and doubt. Those are the main sort of features of the topography of our minds. Then we start to acknowledge, then we examine, and then we can start to think about, okay, now I get the picture, what am I going to do with it? So let's talk a little bit about ill will. What does it mean, ill will, as opposed to goodwill? Ill will is a family of negative states which are generally directed towards harm of some sort. Irritation is a form of ill will. Frustration is a form of ill will. Anger is a form of ill will. Violence is definitely a form of ill will. Being demeaning, being belittling, even being sarcastic, they are all actually sometimes quite subtle expressions of ill will. It's not just one thing, it's a whole family of a harmful attitude, if you like, and which can, of course, express itself in harm. The harm of unkind words, the harm of manipulating others or other creatures, the harm of, ultimately, of violence, which knows no bounds once it starts. Look at the events that are going on, if you look at the news. The horrendous violence that we are capable of once we completely lose the plot and we are overcome by ill will. We identify an enemy, we reject it, we reject that person, and from rejection we move to ill will. Then we want to harm them. Totally unproductive. And we're capable of better. But we have to start by recognizing our own states of mind. Get ourselves unglued from the objects that we're attaching to, or the aims that we're attaching to, and instead examine our own states of mind. So ill will, I could be sitting here trying to meditate and then start having an unpleasant thought about someone. And of course it arises also in everyday life. Somebody cuts you up on the road when you're driving. You might start developing a little fantasy about how you drive them off the road. Of course you probably won't, but you're just having this little fantasy of ill will. It happens to us all. And if you really know yourself, you will recognize that it's pretty turbulent up there, actually. If you're really honest, it's pretty scary what we are capable of thinking or feeling or wanting or not wanting. Of course, we say to ourselves, well, I'm not going to act on that. Of course I'm not. But it's pretty scary that it could even cross one's mind. And it does. That's how we are. But we can move beyond that. We can transcend that by, first of all, acknowledging it, recognizing it, then starting to examine it. And from that, we're in a powerful position to start doing something about it. The opposite, of course, is goodwill. We're capable of that as well. The trouble is, we're often very selective about our goodwill. So we direct ill will in one direction and goodwill in another direction. But we can use goodwill to counteract ill will. Next is what's often translated as laziness, but that's not a very good translation either. I prefer the word apathy. Apathy is, can't be bothered, nothing to do with me really, somebody else will do it, or what does it really matter? The world's a mess anyway, people are horrible, I'm the only nice person on the planet. It's just that nobody understands me. If only they understood me, they would see what a wonderful person I am. What's wrong with the rest of the human race? Don't know, don't care. Does this sound a bit familiar? There's got to be something wrong with this way of looking at things, because if we're all thinking like that, it doesn't add up really, does it, mathematically? So we need to break out of this a bit. Apathy is, that sense of dullness or of mind. It's a kind of generalized rejection, I suppose, of the world in a way. It's quite close to cynicism as well. Cynicism is probably the worst form of it. So like violence is the worst form of ill will, cynicism is probably the worst form of apathy. And by cynicism, I mean having lost trust completely in other people or in the possibility of betterment or improvement or kindness or any of the things that really are virtues. Losing confidence of that and thinking in that and thinking that there's always an ulterior motive. Even when somebody does something kind, really, they're trying to get something out of me. And that's a bit sad, isn't it? It is possible that people are just genuinely kind occasionally, right? You've got to break through this cynicism, which is quite strong in our society, actually. And if you listen to radio or TV, there's quite a lot of cynicism. It's a lack of trust. We've kind of given up on each other, I think. The lack of family value, lack of community, lack of trust in our society at large. We now depend on rules and regulations and laws, health and safety and all the rest of it, because we just has lost trust in each other. And then you've only got to have one incident or one dodgy character, and then we say, there you are, told you you couldn't trust human beings, didn't I? Because of what one person's actions. And then we overlook the fact that every day people are being kind, they are being compassionate, they are being helpful, they are being cooperative every single day. But for some reason we miss that and focus on all the negative side. And that drags us down. And we feel unhappy about it. It's a hindrance. So I might be sitting here trying to meditate. And then I start having these feelings or these doubts. And think about the worthwhileness of it all. Well, recognize it, acknowledge it, examine it. It's your feeling. You're in the best position to look at it and say, what is this? And do I actually want it? Is it helping me in my life? Is it helping me in my understanding or not? Next one is worry, anxiety, concern, fear. Fear generally is at the bottom of worry, anxiety. It's the fear of loss. It's the fear of not being able to get rid of what you don't want and being stuck with it, if you like. It's insecurity. The more I have, the more I can lose. So I'm actually, a pretty strange creature, really. I really beat myself up badly because on the one hand, I'm wanting more stuff. But it's having the stuff that creates the insecurity, because then I might lose it. So look how conflicted I am. I want stuff, but when I've got it, I'm afraid of losing it. So I want the very thing that causes the fear. What would make more sense is if I lived a simple life, wanted very little, and then of course I would have less to lose and less to worry about. The more I have, the more I have to worry about. I used to see this escalation quite a lot when I lived in Africa for 12 years with very, very wealthy people who, wanted all the things that they have in the Western world. So, Nigeria at one time was the biggest importer of luxury Volvo cars in the world. I thought, this is very strange, a country that doesn't have a sewage system in most places, which there's still outbreaks of cholera and some leper colonies. But still, you've got the Volvo, and then the next thing is somebody wants to steal it, because everybody wants a Volvo. If you can't buy one, well, you could steal one. So then you've got to put the Volvo somewhere. So then you build a wall, and then people will climb over walls. But I used to see in Nigeria that this sort of, as the wealth grew, the insecurity would grow with it. So it got to a point where there would be barbed wire, there would be a guard employed full-time at the gate with a gun, huge gates. This is all to protect the house, the swimming pool and everything. The insecurity increased exponentially, the worry. Because you put a man with a gun at the gate of your house, and several people with guns will turn up. Because for one thing, you're saying, I've got a lot to protect in here. And people are thinking, oh, he's got a man with a gun there. Must be a lot that he's protecting. Let's go along with 3 people with guns. That's what happens. That was happening. I saw it happening in Nigeria. Sometimes a whole truckload of people would turn up with guns. They'd just kill the guard in 10 seconds, go in the house and take everything out and load it onto the lorry and drive off into the dusk. They would just empty the whole house. You see, wealthy people are not giving a good message to others. They're creating envy. And then they live in insecurity. But we all want more. And then we create our own suffering. And then we worry, we stay awake at night. Is my insurance policy big enough? Have I got enough insurance? And of course there are people that want to sell you the insurance. So I worry. Finally, there's doubt. There's doubt about whether there's any other way of doing things. What is doubt? Well, I could be sitting here trying to meditate, right? And I'm already dealing with, wanting stuff going through my head, or a bit of anxiety or worry going on, thoughts coming up while I'm trying to meditate. And then there's doubt. And that comes along and knocks on my head and says, why are you sitting on a cushion? You don't really think this is going to work, do you? Right? This is a waste of time. And who's Geoff Hunt anyway? He's talking a load of crap. I bet he doesn't live by this. Right, there's doubt. So that we're doubting the path, we're doubting the teachings, we're doubting whether we can be any other way. Well, that is self-fulfilling, isn't it? Because then that's the final nail in the coffin. Because now I've got desire, ill will, laziness, worry, and finally doubt comes along, knocks the last nail in the coffin, and I give up. And I go back to wanting the Volvo, or whatever it was. What the Buddha says is, be aware of what is going on, what your states of mind. Get to know them. And once we get to know them, then we can think about how to deal with them.
New Buddha Way approaches meditation as a way of life, letting go of East and West, past and future, and starting afresh here and now. To find out more, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.